All right, and after a lot of working through some technical problems, we are live and we have 40 or 39 minutes just about to break down my positional rankings for today's NFL draft, at least for a lot of the guys going in the first couple of rounds. This is going to be a speedy show, not too much fraternizing going on. Joe, before I get into it, I still want to be friendly and say, how you doing?
I'd be doing better if the Patriots take a quarterback at 14.
I,
I'm just kidding. Thought it'd be
not
funny.
sure how much I assume that's going to happen, but I wish you the best in your hopes and dreams, and I hope that it works out well for you. Um, we are currently going to be discussing the positional rankings, and I do want to get into it right away because I do have a lot to say about each position, and I have notes on each position. So, first of all, the one that everyone cares about most, I put all my rankings up here right now just to get everything out in the open. Here are my quarterback rankings. Now, this is not how I think it's going to go. This is not how I think it's going to play out in the draft. I ultimately think that Bryce Young is going to go first overall. And I think Anthony Richardson could very well go before CJ Stroud does. That is not making me waver in what I believe on CJ Stroud. Listen, strong, powerful footwork, great plant leg, squaring to the receiver. I'm not going to give you the whole scouting report, but I'll tell you this. He's got the best touch on his throw of anybody in this draft. It's not particularly close. And he's got some serious zip on the short and medium throws. He's able to move fluidly and confidently and scramble if necessary. We saw that in the Georgia game. And he's going to be a zone crusher in the NFL. Zone is played over 60 to 75% of the time by most teams. I'm not going to give my player comp because I don't want to talk. I don't want to necessarily go through all the discussions that have to go through that. But I will say that CJ Stroud is my quarterback number one. I think if put in the right spot, in the right position, he could easily become an all-pro for many years to come. I think the biggest question mark with him, as it's been since high school, has been motivation and commitment. And that's kind of what we saw with the S2 cognition test, where he said he didn't really care about test taking. He's a football player. He's got to be motivated to do these things. And that's my only concern with him.
Well, if he falls, and I'll keep it brief because I know we have a lot to go through. If he falls, that could be better for him long term. We have seen
Absolutely. And I think
quarterbacks that go to teams with no offensive line, poor coaching, and that's why they're at the top of the draft.
I think that I'm not sure, and don't like put this as like my take. This is not a hot take because I'm not saying it, but he could be releasing this information himself to try and go to a lower team, or his agent if he thinks that he's a better fit there or that he'll get a starting job immediately in one place versus another. Now, obviously, that's a pretty stupid thing to do, to lose yourself money moving down in the draft. That's why I don't ultimately think that's happening, but I think it's a fun conspiracy theory. Anyway, Bryce Young's my obvious number two. I don't want to go through it too much, but this is not trying to diminish what he does by putting Stroud number one. Bryce Young has the best instincts in this draft. He's got great escapability. He's amazing throwing on the run. His footwork, stepping up in the pocket, landing big throws is amazing. He knows when to tuck and run. He's willing to take hits while he throws. He's got great rip strength, great RPO stuff. I see him as kind of a Seattle Russell Wilson kind of guy. And people might think that's a little too high of comparison, seeing as he won 2 Super Bowls, or maybe it was 1, I don't remember. In Seattle, I think it was 2, but who knows?
So let me ask you this then, right? Because as much as we have our big board, where are these guys getting drafted? I think that's what people want to know.
Bryce Young's going to go first overall. That's pretty much without question for me. CJ Stroud, I really can't see getting past 4, maybe 5. But, all this smoke screen about Levis and Richardson going before Stroud, I think, is ultimately people just trying to get other teams to move up for Levis and Richardson so that Stroud can drop to them. I do not believe that anybody thinks that Will Levis is a better quarterback for the NFL than CJ Stroud is. And if they do, that's their prediction and that's their choice. But I don't really think that that's going to be what NFL teams see it as, especially the Indianapolis Colts, who want more stability. CJ Stroud is not a guy who you're worried about coming into your organization and being, an immediately big time bust with his ability to throw in the pocket and his touch on passes against zone coverage.
So are 3 quarterbacks going in the top 15?
In the top 15? Definitely.
And how about the top 5?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Good to
I don't see
get that out there. I know
this,
Anthony Richardson's over-under was 4.5 a couple of hours ago. It's moved to 7.5.
well, that's because people are genuinely concerned about him and Levis. And for that one, like, let me put it this way. The tier 1 is Stroud and Young by far up here. Tier 2 is Richardson and Levis. And in terms of the top 5, I mean, the Panthers are going quarterback. They can say whatever they want. They're going quarterback. The Texans can also say whatever they want. I think they're going quarterback. I think it would be incredibly stupid if they didn't. And with a new head coach, new front office, everything, not new front office, but a lot of new faces in that building, I think they want to build a fresh start. I can't see a quarterback slipping past there. The Cardinals, I don't think are going to take a quarterback. And I think because everybody knows they're not taking a quarterback, that it's going to be hard for them to trade that pick. But if they do, quarterbacks go there because teams are going to be trying to jump the Colts for a QB or the Seahawks. And the Seahawks are a team that I could really see snatching up Anthony Richardson as well, a guy to sit behind Geno for the 2 years that he's locked into that contract for, learn from him, and kind of take over from there. Will Levis, just for the sake of these rankings, Will Levis is behind Anthony Richardson. I think Richardson's raw traits and abilities give him that edge, and the lack of film on Will Levis. And then Tanner McKee, I have as my kind of sleeper quarterback. I think he's a second-round talent, and I think that he has a lot more than people are willing to say he has to offer.
Great. Well, we got the quarterbacks out of the way. Let's move on to some of these other positions.
Yep. And just a quick heads up, I'm not going to go over all 5 for each of these positions. We just don't have the time. And frankly, I don't think everyone's too interested about every single player in every single top 5. Some of these I have 10 for the receivers, for example. And for some positions, I have 3. So really depends on the depth of position. Jahmyr Gibbs is my RB1. Once again, something that a lot of people are probably going to disagree with. A lot of people have Bijan Robinson as their RB1. It's really kind of based on which kind of running back you prefer. I mean, if you really look at what each guy does well, I'm a fan of the guy who's a hard downhill runner, especially when it comes to Bama guys. I love guys that are coached by Saban. He's the best receiving back in the draft, offering that sort of upside. He hits the hole with a lot of force, which is something that I really value. Now, if you're looking for a guy who waits for the hole to open, like, the Le'Veon Bell style of running, the kind of the wait and see and then burst kind of running, that's Bijan Robinson. He's the one-cut guy. He's going to make guys miss upfield. Jahmyr Gibbs is more of the straight line runner. So once again, it really depends on what you prefer. I have them both projected late first round, early second. And then my third running back is, once again, I have kind of a tier system there. That's Zach Charbonnet and Roschon Johnson. I think Roschon Johnson's the better receiving back. I think Zach Charbonnet is the better power back. So it's really all about what you prefer. In terms of where I see these guys going, it's really hard with running backs because it kind of gets to a spot where it could be a best position available kind of thing.
Well, 10 years ago, there's no question, right? Or 15 years ago, there's no question that Bijan Robinson is probably in the top 10, maybe even the top 5 in the 90s. Just the way the game is played has changed so much.
I don't know. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs really also has that downhill running quality that it was valued in the 90s. So I don't necessarily know, but I do know that I think that one of them comes off the board at 21 to the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are really in need of interior offensive line help, but the interior offensive lineman in this draft, I mean, I have, spoiler alert, I have one interior offensive lineman in my first round rankings. He's a center.
He's going 14th to the Patriots?
No, I don't necessarily have him going to the Patriots, but I don't have them going interior offensive line 2 years in a row. But I do think that the Chargers are not going to want to go center with their pick, and they are looking at the possibility of losing Austin Eckler more and more so every day. And a running back, particularly Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy who could replace that receiving role, could be appetizing for them here at the 21 spot. So
I love it.
yeah,
I'm interested in that. You're the first person I've talked to who has Bijan Robinson not at the top of the running back list. This
yes.
will be exciting. My question
It's
is
once
this:
again, it's all about
over
what you
under.
prefer.
Oh, the over under on first round running backs was 1.5. How do we feel about that?
Once again, like that's something I'd really stay off of because you'd really never like.
Well, look, I gotta play something. Come on, like,
Of
give me
course
some,
you
give
do.
me something.
Of course you do. But like the Chargers are a team I could see doing it. And realistically, I could see the Bills doing it. I could see, the Eagles doing it. I could see the no, not the Jaguars. So maybe two teams. Maybe the Cowboys could do it since they're losing Zeke, but they already have Pollard. Maybe two teams that might do it. So if you believe that those teams are gonna do it, hit it. But if you don't, or if you're skeptical about one of them, is it really worth it? Probably not.
Now, worth noting. Let's move on to the third position group here. In the interest of time, what are we going with here, Sam?
Absolutely. We are going with the wide receivers as soon as it will load up.
Oh, beautiful!
There
It's
we go.
loaded up. We're going with the
So
Patriots.
there are surprises.
I love it.
Sorry. So this says part 1 and then lists Jackson Smith and Jigba as one, just so it doesn't say part 11. That's because I have 10 receivers listed. Going to show you all of them. Not going to go in depth on all of them. Jackson Smith and Jigba is my wide receiver 1, and I'm pretty confident about it. I really am. Like I love some of the things that he does with his route running ability, and the biggest question mark with him is kind of the injury. And if the biggest question mark with the guy is an injury that he had over a year ago that he's been training to get back from, I don't necessarily think that's as big of a problem as many people do. I think this wide receiver class is weak compared to other wide receiver classes. And I knocked over my notes on him, so I'm going to go over and grab them. But what I will say is that Jackson Smith and Jigba has great ball skills. He's great at adjusting to the ball in midair. He's got a lot of qualities and traits that teams find valuable. While his break line, 40-yard dash speed might not be perfect, might not be ideal for everybody. For me, I love how he breaks on balls. I love a lot of things about his game, and I don't love a lot about a lot of the other wide receivers in this draft.
All right, which one of these guys is going to be a Patriot? Because
I'll take it. Listen, this is something I can see the Patriots taking. Coached by Bryant Hartline, who has sent now 4 or 5 really solid receivers to the NFL from Ohio State. Great route running, great footwork, going to fall in the draft because of an external problem that someone like Bill Belichick might be able to overlook. I really like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I have a mid first round grade on him, which lands exactly where the Patriots are, around 14. I could definitely see that being the case.
All right, well, I'm getting a jersey then. Let's get excited.
You going to buy yourself a jersey now? It's a bold one, but I like the enthusiasm.
I'm doing it. I'm placing the pre-order.
All righty.
It has to be custom too, because I had no idea what number he would wear. That kind of thing. I have a feeling it won't be 12. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I have that feeling as well. I have Rashee Rice at number 2, and this is something that would probably rub a lot of draft people wrong. I'm one of the only people that really thinks that Rashee Rice has first round talent, or shouldn't say talent, first round viability. That's because he is really his route tree is not diversified. He's got the great straight line speed. He's got amazing ball skills. He's got great vertical at jump. He's great at getting in the air. What really stands out to me is his 10-yard split out of the 40-yard dash. I love guys that can get that quick acceleration off the line. He's got great release, which I think is going to absolutely help him when it comes to getting off the line and getting open early in his NFL career. And I think that in the ever expanding NFL, where it's all about the deep ball, it's all about going deep and making explosive plays, this is a guy who can not only make the explosive plays, but he can make plays after making the big catch. So I'm a really big fan of Rashee Rice. I think he fits into a lot of different passing systems in this league. And I think that as the game continues to, evolve into this game where these guys who can throw the ball 65 yards down the field are more and more coveted, you're going to have guys like Rashee Rice who stand out more and more. And the last guy I really want to talk about, the last two, I want to talk about Josh Downs and Quentin Johnston. Josh Downs is the probably the cleanest route runner in this draft. His footwork is exceptional. He's going to become a very, very, very good slot receiver for some team in this draft. He's going to play in the slot. He's got the quickness. He's got the release off the line, and his footwork. Job, if you have any time to watch video of someone's footwork before going into this draft, watch Josh Downs' footwork on his route running, on his breaks. He's going to get himself open a lot against man coverage. Quentin Johnston, people might be surprised to see him down here in the second round. Originally, going into this before I watched film, he was my wide receiver 1.
Wow. That's a tumble.
That's a tumble. He can't beat the press. And that's a big problem. If you watch the game against Georgia.
N'Keal Harry, huh?
You watch the game against Georgia. N'Keal Harry with more speed, which is why people like him more. He's got great 4.3 speed. He's got great release off the line, great acceleration. He's great with, contested catches. But his route tree is similar to that of DK Metcalf at Ole Miss, which was just running straight down the field, which is fine because DK Metcalf was able to beat the press. But when you watch him play against Georgia, they pressed the living crap out of him, and he couldn't get down the field. He couldn't present a target for Max Duggan, who had to do everything himself. That's part of the reason why they lost 65-7. Your number one receiver cannot disappear like that. And when you look at his game logs, he had a bunch of explosive games, but then a bunch of games where he did absolutely nothing. 3 receptions, 40 yards, 2 receptions, 50 yards, couple big plays here and there, but not actually able to separate himself consistently. That's not something I can get from a first-round receiver. That's not something I want. I need him to show improvement at those levels before I can consider him that level, even though he has the traits, the athletic traits and physical traits to make him a first-round talent if he was able to develop those other skills.
Well, this is something that can be coached up, though, correct?
Yes, but it's really hard to get someone in the NFL who isn't good at breaking press to work on breaking press, because that's such a minute skill that you have to work on that on the side. That's not something you're going to be able to go over and practice because other people are not working on that. They've gotten to that by this point. You have to do that during individual workouts. So that's something that we're going to have to see him do by himself. Anyway, I want to move on to the second group of receivers who I'm not going to talk about, but my sleeper of the wide receiver group right here, Michael Wilson, Stanford, middle of the second round. Remember the name. Great route runner, stood out during the Senior Bowl. Not great top line speed, but great release speed, which is what is more important for a wide receiver. He's got football speed, run after the catch ability. Love him. Moving on, tight ends. Once again, only going to go over 2 of them here. Michael Mayer and Darnell Washington. Michael Mayer is the prototypical guy. He's got the route running ability. He's got the hands. He's got decent blocking ability, and he is a good route tree. He showed it all off at Notre Dame where they gave him ample opportunity to. He's one of those guys who is going to be an NFL starter. It's not really much of a debate. Injuries aside, knock on wood, I don't really see much of a way that he doesn't develop into an NFL player for at least several years. He's a good pass catcher, and he's really got all of those abilities he's good at finding the open space. Darnell Washington has the athletic capabilities. He's 6'6", 6'7", huge guy, 240 plus, I think. Not 240, sorry, not 240, 220 plus, and he's fast. He's got the hands, and he has got the ability to find his way into open space, which is surprising that he can find open space at that size, but it's a real weapon that was not necessarily used as much as it should have been at Georgia because they were able to dominate the run game and the outside the margins passing game so easily. But in the NFL, he's going to become a real asset, especially in the red zone. So I like him for an early to mid second round grade, despite some of his shortcomings in the route running game. Joe, you got anything to add on these 2 fellas?
Of course, I'm on mute. The comp that I heard for Darnell Washington is like a Jimmy Graham. Does that make sense to you?
It definitely. Listen, that makes sense to me. He's the guy that you can throw a jump ball on the flat route to in the end zone. He's the guy that you can trust to get body control and body positioning on linebackers who he will have a size advantage against, which is not common for the linebackers to have to deal with and safeties to have to deal with. And he's hard to bring down. So, yeah, I would definitely accept that comparison. My only side off with that being that Jimmy Graham became a great route runner over the course of his career. And that's something that Darnell Washington has to do.
I'm ready for it.
What? You ready?
I'm ready for it.
You're ready for it? All right, we're gonna.
I believe in Darnell Washington.
I loved him in college. He was so fun to watch. They called him the Big O for some reason. I don't know where the O comes in. Probably something to do with the nickname. But we're gonna move on to offensive tackles, where I have yet another set of players that are not in the same order that a lot of people have them in.
But you got some guys here that are probably going to be on the Patriots, so it's okay,
So, first of all, I want to go over Broderick Jones, and I'm going to pull up my notes for him because he is a mind-blowing prospect. Broderick Jones, you ready for this? He is
give it to me.
6'6", I want to say, and almost 340 pounds, 320, something around that area. He runs a sub 540. He's got a massive frame. His athleticism is unheard of for his size. His grip strength with his hands on the jersey, great. He's very good at passing off pass rushers to the next blocker. He's got good pulling ability and good pulling speed, which is very uncommon for someone his size. He played at a great program. He's experienced, and he's not experienced. He played at a great program, period. He's inexperienced, which is one of the drawbacks, and he's sometimes too aggressive with his hands, which could lead to some holding penalties. But I have him as an early to mid first round grade with the potential to become an all-pro tackle. I think he has that ability if developed properly, and I really, really like his game. This is nothing to diminish Paris Johnson. I like Paris Johnson a lot as a prospect, and for what it's worth, I think Paris Johnson's going to get picked before Broderick Jones because Kyler Murray wants Paris Johnson. And I think the Arizona GMs are finally ready to accommodate him. But
why do you say that Kyler Murray wants Paris Johnson?
Because he has stated so.
Oh, okay. Well, that helps.
He has said so to the Cardinals organization.
There you go. The over-under on tackles taken in the first round is 4.5. It looks like you've got 4 here. How do you feel about that?
Listen, obviously I feel like the line is set properly.
Well, the line is set properly on all of these, right? That's the problem.
I think there's no doubt in my mind that at least 4 of these guys, like the top 4 are coming off the board in the first round. Jones, Johnson, Wright, and Skoronski are all getting drafted. The question is whether or not DeJuan Jones gets drafted on draft night tonight. And the thing is with DeJuan Jones is he's also from Ohio State, similar to Paris Johnson. Paris Johnson played on the left, Jones played on the right. And DeJuan Jones really has the size and mauler ability. Like he's got that mean streak on that right side. He'll knock guys over and stand over him, but he's got heavy feet and his hips are not necessarily as fluid as you'd want on a guy facing a lot of speed rushers on that left end. So I am cautious on DeJuan Jones going in the first round, which is why I have him in the second.
Well, I'll be watching along with Dov on Twitter. Obviously, the NBA put my Celtics game on at the same time as the draft. It's going to cause a little bit of confusion early in the draft. I'll probably be tuning in for some picks, not all.
And I want to say one more thing before we move on to the next position group. Paris Johnson I have as a mid-first rounder, not an early first rounder, even though I think he's going to go in the early first round. And that's because I don't think he has great balance. I think he needs to strengthen his lower body. His hand placement and techniques needs a little work. And he's only played left tackle 1 season. So those are a couple things that separated Broderick Jones from me. Although a lot of people have Paris Johnson over Broderick Jones, which I respect.
So who's the first tackle taken?
The first tackle taken should be Broderick Jones. It's going to be Paris Johnson.
Okay, you heard it here first. Well, let's get on to the interior offensive line. A lot of teams need help here. It looks like you got 3 guys you want to talk about. Let's go through them.
Yeah, going to go over all 3 of them real quick. John Michael Schmitz is that, you know how every year there's a center who's like pro ready, but he's not going to go until late in the first round because there's not many teams that need a center, but every year he ends up being a good center.
Yeah, he's their standard.
That's this guy, literally. He's a guy that everyone's like, he's going to be an NFL starter, but he's not like, something you need to draft in the top 15 because he's a center. So we'll draft him in the late first round. This is a guy I could see my Giants going after. and he's strong in both the passing and running game. Good mobility, smart guy. The only thing is he has some balance issues sometimes, which is not uncommon for centers coming out of college. And then the only other guy I want to talk about Andrew Voorhees. I don't actually want to go over Cody Mauch because I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. We can talk about that tomorrow. I think Voorhees has a chance at going day 1 because he is a mean guy. He played at USC. He's played at multiple.
I love how this sport we're able to say he's a mean guy is a good thing.
He's a dick on the offensive line.
Like that is the only sport in the world where you can say, yeah, this guy sucks.
This
and everyone's
guy's
like, yeah, let's go,
on
man.
the offensive
this guy
line,
on my
which
team.
is exactly what you want. He's played in both offensive guard and tackle positions. He's played on both sides of the offensive line. He's a hard worker. He's consistent at the point of attack with technique, and he's got a good first punch. His athleticism is going to be tested. He's a little too tall for a guard, and that's because guys are going to need to get low on him, and he's going to need to get low on them. And it's kind of tough to do so from up there, which causes some balance issues. But I'm a big fan of him pulling. I think he's got a lot of strength, and that's not the guy you want to see running at you if you're a linebacker guarding a sweep play on a run.
Well, I'm excited. We'll talk about Cody tomorrow on North Dakota State. If you think he's late second round, I'm happy to do that tomorrow. I'm sure he won't go in the first round. That would be a little bit of a shocker, unless Bill Belichick likes him. In which case, he might be from a D2 school, a la Cole Strange, who gets picked, way earlier than he should. But it seems like those are happening less and less frequently.
Well, I will say this: people have to start understanding that North Dakota State University is a program that produces high-level NFL players, at least 1 or 2 per draft, because that's the case. And the sooner people accept that, the sooner these prospects will stop being as underrated as they are.
Well, I like when they're underrated and the Patriots get them and they're good. I hate when they're underrated and the Patriots get them and then they were correctly rated and we just overrated them. Jalen Carter is here on the board. Obviously,
I'm not going over Jalen Carter.
Everyone knows who he is. Everyone
knows why he's
IDL on the board. Let's go through Brian Brees from Clemson, and then maybe even Mazi Smith if we have time.
I've seen a lot of people talk about liking or not liking Brian Brees. He kind of seems like the most polarizing prospect here. Like either you like him or you really don't. I think he's got insane athleticism. I really like. One second. If you can't tell, I have so many freaking notes.
I just want to know who to bet on. That's just how I look.
He has this really good mix of athleticism and IQ that's really, really coveted in a guy at his position. The problem is he's had a lot of injuries over the last couple of years. But once again, I say that if that's the only big drawback on a guy, a team's going to be willing to take a flyer on him with all that talent.
Will they take a flyer on him in the first round is the question. Obviously, Jalen Carter is probably a top 5 pick in the draft.
I can see a lot of teams in the back of the first round doing this. I can see the Vikings doing it. I can see the Jaguars doing it.
What about a team like the Packers? They're set for total rebuild.
Maybe I could see them doing it. But once again, he could be anywhere from 10 on teams' draft boards to 35.
Right.
He's one of those guys where I really have no idea where other people are putting him. That's because the question about durability is valued differently by every organization. And so I think that with his ability and with his combination of skills and size, that he's worthy of being a first-round pick, at least a late first-round pick. He might fall into the early second if teams end up seeing that as a big detriment to him. But I don't think he will. I think he's a first-round pick, and most people have him as a first-round pick. And then Mazi Smith, I don't really want to go over, actually, because I think everyone's actually a little too high on him. People have him above Brees, and some people even have him close to Carter. I don't have him there. I think he's a year or two away from being there. I want to actually talk about Kalijah Cansey. Say that name 5 times fast, because a lot of people like him because of how dominant he was in college. I have real concerns about his size. He's a 6 foot tall guy. He's 265, 280 pounds. It's hard. Yeah, but even then, that takes away from his athleticism, which is one of the biggest parts of his game. So I'm a little more concerned about Cansey than most people are. Because of that, I have him in the second round. Well, I think everybody in the world seems to have him as a first round talent.
Interesting. All right, well, let's get to edge players here. Obviously, everyone
Not
knows
going
Will
over the
Anderson.
first two.
We're not going to
Not
have to
doing
talk
it.
about him. Tyrese Wilson from Texas Tech. Everyone knows
Tyree.
about him at this point. Let's go with Miles Murphy from Clemson. This is the second Clemson guy you have in the first round. Tell us a little bit about why.
Miles Murphy kind of presents this really interesting combination of speed and bend, which is highly coveted in the NFL these days. Lots of traits that people would like to see. He plays in multiple different schemes. Here's the big problem: he doesn't finish plays entirely well. And that's something that is really, really looked at as a crucial element of being a player in the trenches in the NFL. Is you've got to be able to finish plays, chasing the quarterback, pursuing tackles, finishing blocks if the guy blocking you is doing a little too much work on you, changing moves to try to go to a backup move to try to get to the quarterback if the play is broken down. Those kinds of things are necessary. That's the big drawback with Miles Murphy is people do not know if he's got that motor. And that's something that I think is really interesting to keep an eye on how teams covet that and how he progresses in his first year. I also have Nolan Smith higher than Derek Hall. A lot of people are going to be upset about that. I just think Derek Hall's a little bit of a raw prospect. I think Nolan Smith has more experience at a better program with better coaches, with more experience sending defensive players to the NFL. I think his combine measurements, while I might be a sucker to them, are very important for an edge rusher who's looking to be a speed rusher. Not saying he reminds me of him, but that's the similar path that Micah Parsons took. And if you remember, a lot of people were questionable about whether or not he could be an edge rusher. I think Nolan Smith is going to become a solid edge rusher if he's put in the right scenario to do so. I think the late first round offers a lot of different possibilities that are the right area to do so. So I think he goes before Derek Hall does.
I think that's a hot take. A lot of people are going to agree with me that that's a hot take. I want to ask you one more question. Does it not concern you, when you have guys from, Georgia, Bama, these big schools that have a lot of help, right? It's not like they're getting double teamed every single time like some of these other schools because you can't double team, say, a Nolan Smith without freeing up somebody else, on that Georgia defensive line who's an absolute beast. And so they haven't really faced the same kind of coverage that maybe some of these other guys like a Miles Murphy has faced.
Well, I will say, first of all, Miles Murphy played on the same defensive line as Brian Bresee. So
I guess that's fair, right? I picked the wrong example.
Yeah, I'd say more Derek Hall would be the example there, or Tyree Wilson, which is why a lot of people like Tyree Wilson, by the way. But I understand that. I think at a certain point you have to take that into account while not using it to take away from the player's ability. That's a real tough line to walk, but there's a certain point where you have to stop saying it's because of this and start appreciating their play. And there's a certain point where you have to recognize where their opportunities are coming from. It's a real give and take, and it's one of the reasons why watching film is so important.
Right.
You can really see how guys deal with different schemes.
So here's my last kind of question. I know we said we weren't going to go into Will Anderson, right? But he is probably he's the most well-known player on the board at this position. Is he going in the top 15?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Okay, let's move on here. I know we have to wrap, so let's get to linebackers really quickly.
Talk about one guy here. That's Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell is going to be a Pro Bowl linebacker in the NFL. Straight up.
And who's picking him?
I have a mid first round grade on him just because he's got a couple problems with blitzing. The thing with the who's picking who argument is like, I think he should go way higher than I think he's ultimately going to go. Teams don't value he's the old school linebacker. He's got a big frame.
Oh, he's Fridge.
Fridge is a defensive tackle. But he's got a big frame. He hits hard downhill. He's great at reading the play as soon as it happens. He's big on hit power. He's good on zone. Not as good at man, but good on zone. Not as big of a blitzer as he is just a reader of the play. And he's got decent sideline to sideline speed as well for someone his size. So, I mean.
Could he be Luke Kuechly? I mean,
yes.
That's the key, right? If you could be that guy.
I'm not saying he's going to be the level of Luke Kuechly's talent and
Of course.
like
But
career.
that's what Luke Kuechly did, though, was more of a react to the play,
Yes.
read the
I
play.
think he's that type of player. Absolutely. He's going to make his living off of reading the play. And I think he's a starting Mike in the NFL week 1, in my opinion.
Wow. Well, that's high praise. Let's kind of wrap here. Give us some final takes on the cornerback position. I know we don't have too much time.
Yep.
I do want to hear about Gonzalez from Oregon.
Gonzalez is my corner 1, and I think that he is ultimately going to become a top tier, not top tier, but a great corner, a very solid corner in this league. He's got great man zone ability. He's 6'2". He's got the arm length to kind of make up for some of his possible shortcomings if he falls behind in a route. My favorite thing about him, something I think is very, very important for corners, most flexible hips in the draft class. His ability to fluidly turn his hips with route changes is going to save him multiple times per game, and it's going to allow him to keep track of the receiver while keeping his eyes on the quarterback, which he's good at doing because he's good at reading QBs. Now, the only thing I have a problem with him on, because he does have great ball skills that he improved on, that's another thing. He improved year to year on his ball skills. That's something I really look for. He's got good closing speed and he's a good tackler, but he's got a kind of a lean frame. That's my big concern. I don't want him to get bodied by, DK Metcalf-like receivers who use their strength off the line of scrimmage to separate. That's my only concern with him, but that can also be easily changed by bulking up, which I'm sure that whatever team drafts him will have him do before the season starts. This guy, to me, is a top 10 draft pick.
Well, that's also the concern with Witherspoon, right, is that his size is not elite, and he could get beat by taller receivers.
Witherspoon's concern is more warranted, in my opinion, because Gonzalez still has the height and arm length. Witherspoon does not.
No, he's a small guy for
5'11", and
his wingspan, I think, is only 6'2".
Less, shorter wingspan. And so I think he translates more as a nickel corner, which ultimately is what dropped him to this 2 list because I love Devin Witherspoon's game. But he's questionable on the outside. And in this NFL with 2 wide receivers lining up outside every time, you're going to need outside receivers more than you're going to need the slot. So outside corners more than you're going to need the slot. So I like Christian Gonzalez more than Devin Witherspoon. I think Joey Porter Jr. is a very, very solid corner that's also going to be a very good starter in the NFL. I think that his ability to use the sideline as a defender is great. And I think that he's got very good experience working the outside. He's just got a little bit of a tendency to get handsy and to lose the receiver while trying to read the QB. And the last thing I want to go over, I'm not going to go over any of these guys. I just want to show the list because I have to go. Brian Branch is my number 1 corner. Brian, number 1 safety. Sidney Brown's number 2, and my boy Jamie Robinson.
We'll talk about all these guys tomorrow.
Yep. And I love sleeper for cornerbacks. I love Corian Bennett. If you saw the Senior Bowl, you saw how he showed out. Really like him. And as I said, for my sleepers at wide receiver, I really like Michael Wilson from Stanford. That's going to do it for
the
me.
Last question.
Yeah.
Who's the best player that's going to get drafted tonight?
Come on. You can't. I have 30 seconds.
I'm doing it. Who's going to have the best NFL career? Give me a name. We'll dissect it after the draft.
I mean, at their position.
Just in general. Give me the best player who's going to come out of this draft.
Screw it. Christian Gonzalez.
Okay, I love it. See, out of Oregon.
Can I give one offensive, one defensive? Can I give one offensive, one defensive?
Sure,
that doesn't feel right.
Go for it.
Defensive is Christian Gonzalez. Offensive player. I'm gonna go with. I know it's basic. I'm gonna go with the quarterback. I'm gonna go with C.J. Stroud.
Well, that's not that basic. CJ's been falling a lot across the board here. I know you've been a CJ believer since OSU.
He's been my guy since he came out of high school. That's my guy.
I know.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I don't really know if anyone was here. I didn't necessarily get a look at the viewership. I hope people enjoyed. I'm going to be releasing some articles later tonight detailing this big board, releasing all these positional rankings, and one mock draft. You can find that, as as you can see on the bottom ticker at www.sourcepodcast.com. I have to go. See you guys. Happy draft day, Joe. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Absolutely.
Thank you to Sharp Breaker sponsors, and thank you to BCMG.